Now at noon, one Southwest Atlanta home is a total loss after an overnight fire. Atlanta News First reporter Mary Kate Hamilton has been there in the First Alert breaking news tracker all morning long. So this was actually out last night, then it started up again early this morning, Mary Kate.
That's right, and we're getting an even better look at the damage. You can see almost entirely through this home. It's a total loss after firefighters spent all morning long battling the fire in frigid temperatures. This Southwest Atlanta home completely destroyed after a fire ravaged the house overnight. Crews responded to the fire in the 2300 block of Herring Drive. When they arrived, they tried to fight it from inside of the home. Quickly, that became too dangerous, due in part to the home visibly leaning. That's when firefighters moved to the perimeter, knocking out walls and siding to better douse the flames. An added complication, below freezing temperatures.
We're battling the building and the freezing conditions now. So every bit of the water that we're flowing is turning to ice. So you know, it brings its own challenge to the fight for sure.
Captain Daniel Sullivan says the ice that collected around the home made for tricky conditions for the firefighters on the ground.
The ice is really not a factor with the operation. It's just the safety of everyone moving around the structure.
We're told no one was inside of the home at the time of the fire, and thankfully no civilians or firefighters were injured. Crews were able to completely knock the fire down around 9 o'clock this morning, nearly 6 hours after it began. Crews tell me the heaviest damage to the home is in the middle of the house, but this fire is still under investigation. Reporting live in Southwest Atlanta, Mary Kate Hamilton, Atlanta News First.